let's get this started. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Stu Paterson, and I'm going to be talking about the room combining functionality in our Composer software. What it does, what you can do with it, and a quick rundown on how to set up your programming to accommodate room combining. First off, let's talk about what the heck is room combining anyway. In certain applications, let's just say a banquet hall or a hotel or conference room or anything of that nature, convention hall. You have many smaller rooms that have the divisible walls that can be arranged in multiple configurations. 10 rooms could be 5 rooms at one point. They can pull the walls here, there, everywhere for what any kind of configuration they need to match the people that they are accommodating. However, that becomes problematic, or I don't want to say problematic, but more challenging for audio applications, because what do you do with the audio when you combine these rooms? How do you route that audio? How do you make sure that when you have rooms A and B separate, A and B receive their own individualized audio? And moreover, if they have inputs sources for those rooms individually, they need to have them individual, but when they're combined, both A and B, there needs to be a master input and output source. So in this case, you would utilize room combining. Now, a room combiner, we have several different types of room combining modules. Let me go ahead and I'm going to unpause my screen, and we're going to go back and I'm going to show you. So room combining, like I said, so we're going to use this as an example. On my screen right now, you see a combinable and configurable room with 4 separate locations, but it's just one large room. Effectively, there's just movable walls that separate them into 4 compartments. And with room combining, we can have that configured any way we want. So in any kind of configuration, you can have 1 and 3 together with 2 and 4, so they're 2 separate rooms instead of 4. Or oppositely, you can go 1 and 2 are combined, 3 and 4 are combined. You have 2 rectangular horizontal rooms, or all 4 combined. In this demonstration, I'm not going to combine diagonal rooms for obvious reasons. So, well, how we're going to do this is the software and the hardware that we're going to be using today is our Radius NX12x8. And for controlling the combining, the volume control, BGM sources, etc., we'll be utilizing programming for our ARC series, the ARC K1Es, the ARC SW4s, and the ARC EX4. Now, how we're going to do this is we're going to utilize the slave gain sharing auto mixer for each room. All this module simply does is take the inputs of each room, mix them together automatically to a certain level, and then outputs to the main, in this case, the mix. And that will be sent to our BGM Automix Combiner. Now, in our second picture, you can see there are 4 slave gain sharing auto mixers feeding the BGM Automix Combiner. So these gain sharing auto mixers, their sources are the individual rooms. And that's how they are configured to go into the Automix Combiner. So we also have, you can not see on the bottom there, we have BGM. BGM is background music. So we have 4 background music sources, or in this case 3, that are being sent into the Automix Combiner. Now, because these slave gain sharing auto mixers are separated, but because we have them in a chain, as you can see, the chain input, each of the BGM Automix Combiner inputs, we have a chain input, a mix input, and down below the BGM area. That's ultimately how we combine all these signals. Now I think I've moved a little bit too far forward, so I'm going to back up just a little bit and continue. So let's talk about this room first. So as you saw in the picture previously, it was a 4 divisible room. 4 rooms that are divisible from 1 master room. In each room, we're going to have 2 microphones per room, 1 line input per room, and each have their own loudspeakers. Again, each loudspeaker needs to have an output source that is going to match the room combination. Then we have 4 shared BGM sources, and well, more on that later. And I've told you all previously that we have for control the ARC K1E NEX4 for volume and BGM selection, and an ARC SW4 for combining purposes, master combining purposes, and also SymVue for volume combining. Now, for this demonstration, for this webinar, because our studio doesn't have the ARCs installed yet, and we can't give you a video of the functionality, I'm going to use SymVue to a site example to show you how the combining, uncombining, volume controls, etc. functions. Okay. Now, let's do here. Now, here's a brief overview of the site file that I've created, well, we've created. And this gives you a top-down view of what is going into this programming. As I said previously, each room has 2 mic sources and a line-in source. As you can see here, room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, 3 sources, direct sources from those rooms. And down below, you'll see feeding my USB I/O node is a computer, which I will be feeding. That's our BGM source. So our multiple BGM source. And of course, each room has their own amplifier channel and loudspeakers. So moving in. Now, just a brief overview on room combining and the room combining modules that we have available. As I stated earlier, in this example, we are using the BGM Automix Combiner, but we have other combiners that you can use. We have the standard combiner, which is literally that. Takes a signals, or various signal sources that you have configured, depending on how many rooms you have, and it just simply combines them. That's all it does. Very simple for very quick, easy applications where you don't need auto mixing, you don't need BGM source mixing into the rooms or anything of that nature. Now, we also have an Automix Combiner, which is effectively the same thing as a BGM auto mixer, except it's only auto mixing the room sources, and that is it. So once effectively you need to use, again, the slave gain sharing auto mixers, chain them up much like we have here, and I'll show you that in a minute, but it excludes BGM sources. And now the BGM Combiner. The BGM Combiner is effectively the same as the standard combiner. It doesn't have auto mix capabilities. However, it does mix and allow control of both the volumes. If you'll notice earlier, because it's an auto mixer, it doesn't have volume control. It's an auto mixer, that's its job. It automatically sets the gain. However, with the BGM combiner, you do have volume control, individual volume control of the room source, which is going to be the input, or the BGM volume separately, which of course is the background music. And of course, you can select each one individually as needed. And much the same as the Automix Combiner, let's just say for the sake of argument, room 1, we have our volumes set to however we want. Everyone is happy in these rooms. They're all separate, each their own little party, maybe even a Halloween party. And by the way, happy Halloween, everyone. So everything's effectively different. So, but now we have room 1 and 2. They want to combine into one large party. So we just go over here to the combine buttons, and you'll notice in each field, we have numerals designating the room numbers. Now, by default, this area is going to populate with the room numbers that you've created by dragging in from the toolbox. However, you can enter in specialized or any other combination that you need, especially handy with larger BGM combiners or where you have multiple rooms where there aren't enough combine buttons for how many rooms you have. You're left with editing these for whatever you need to do. Like in this case, I can do room 52 and room 1 combined. There's no room 52, we won't do that. But you can see how you can, that's possible. So when I press the combine button, you'll notice something. I don't know if anybody saw that, so I'm gonna do this again. So let's just say everybody has their own separate source. Let's make it more apparent. So room one and room 2, like I said, separate parties, each have their own settings. I go over to the number 1 combine button, which is room 1 and 2, and you'll notice that it's snapped to match the 2 rooms. So it took one of the room's input sources and BGM volume and made it now the master. So I can go here, and even though I'm moving the volume or adjusting the volume for room 1, it's adjusting for both room 1 and room 2. The same is true with the BGM volume as well as source selection. And I can go over to room 2 and do the same thing. The same is true with 3 and 4. So if I combine 3 and 4, again, now there's one master, or I shouldn't say there's one master, both of them, both controls. If let's just say you have an ARC panel or an Extron control or Crestron control where you're controlling, each room has their own controls, and that room 4 controller is being pressed, it will affect room 3 because they are combined. And this is a programming shift. So it's not the Extron control or the ARC panels doing the combining, it's this module itself. And then I can uncombine from there at will. So that's the introduction. So moving on to the Automix Combiner, it's exactly the same. In this example, I have 8 sources, 8 BGM sources. But I probably could have reduced it down to, let's see, yeah, that's fine, 8's fine. So same controls, except in the background, we have the Automix capabilities. What is the order of priority when combining? The order is technically, it's going to be even, generally speaking, so, but it doesn't really matter which one the order of priority is, because as soon as I combine it, it's going to snap. So generally speaking, as you saw previously, let me try this one more time, uncombine. So I'm going to go ahead and combine rooms 1 and 2, and 1 went ahead and snapped it. It's the last one used that is the priority. So it's not a set priority, it's whichever one was used previously. So let's do this. See what happened there? So the last one used is the other one is going to be the master in that case. It's going to snap back to the other one that hasn't been adjusted. All right, so moving on again, but this module has the auto mix capabilities, which is generally going to take the input sources, mix them to appropriate level, and output. But how does it do this? Well, let's go backwards. Let's go to our input sources. As you can see, as in that on my slideshow, you had the super modules. Now, if we drill down, there's our slave gain sharing auto mixer. So it does 2 things, as you can see. So it takes a chain output and a master input, as well as the mic inputs. So what happens here is the mic inputs go into the slave gain sharing auto mixer. They're outputted to the mix and outwards to the BGM auto mixer. However, and the same thing with the line input. The line input, we're bypassing the gain sharing auto mixer because we're using that for the microphones, just for leveling purposes. But the chain, what the chain does, that is attached to the chain input of the BGM Automix Combiner to allow that module to now control that slave mixer. And then, of course, you have the mix input, which is literally that. That's the audio input of that module being fed to that unit. Now, there's also a master output. So the master output, this is a control signal. It's an audio control signal. It's not a digital control. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not like if you look at our logic, we have this control node. It's not a control node. It's an audio control signal. So you need to route that master, which it truly is, back to the input, the master input on the gain sharing auto mixer for that auto mixer, the BGM auto mixer, to control this unit. It is now the master and that is now the slave, or primary and secondary in modern parlance. So now that's each one. So we have 4 of these super modules. Each one has their own slave gain sharing auto mixer set up for the microphones and their own line level inputs, feeding the BGM Automix Combiner. Now, down here are my BGM or my background music sources. I should point right here, coming from our USB module, our 8x8 USB module, I should say. So those are my audio sources at the moment. And I'm just running those through an automatic gain control. We're not using an Automix function prior to this, but we're just using an individual channel gain control for that purpose. And we enter them into the Automix Combiner. Now that I have my sources, we can control them once we're online. But moving on, everything else is fairly simplistic going to the outputs. So on the output side, we each have a room output. Each room has its own output, I should say. So room 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're effectively separate if necessary. So let's go ahead and trace a signal path here to show you. So right now, room 1 is only going to room 1, as you can see with the red audio or signal path indicator. But if I go in here, let's go ahead and combine 1 and 2, why not? And do that again, we're now going to 2 rooms based on that button I pressed, which was combine room 1 and 2. And so on down the line. And we can do it in any kind of combination. So we can do 1 and 3 just for giggles. So let's trace signal path for 1, 3. And as you can see, now we have rooms 1 and 3. Now, if you remember correctly, these were diagonal rooms. So not very effective with setup, especially if you have other diagonal rooms because they're effectively separate, but you know, it works for an example. Okay, so now what I want to do is show a live example of how this functions. Now, of course, you can take these buttons and you can place them on a control screen for combination purposes, source selection, or you can add them to a ARC panel for the purposes of having each room have its individual control. But of course, once those rooms are combined, those ARC panels or Crestron, any kind of example you want, or controlling device will control both rooms at once, even though you may be only pressing the room 2 control, it's controlling both of them because they are combined. Whoops, sorry. Let me combine 1 and 2, so what I'm saying is true. So I'm going to go ahead and push online. Okay, so now we're online. And as I stated previously, you can create a control screen for the purposes of controlling the signal sources. Now, what I've done, let me go ahead and open this so we can see the module at the same time as the control screen. make some room. This is a small screen. I wish I had a 4K monitor, but you know what? Wishes, fishes, whatever. So currently, everyone is separate. So I can select our own source. Let's go ahead down here. Let's see. Each room has their own individual source. So room 2 has BGM source 2, and so on. So let's go here. But you'll notice these black room dividing features. So these are actually buttons. I've taken these buttons, these combined buttons, I've copied the button to a control screen. And then once I've done that, I've adjusted the look of it to just be blank and indicate some sort of room control just for visual purposes. So in this case, if I were to press this, I'm gonna go ahead and drop this and combine rooms 1 and 2, now I'm controlling both rooms. Let's see, over here, I'm controlling both room volumes as well as the BGM volume. I can go ahead and click this again and separate them, or I'm sorry, separate them again, and I have individual control for those rooms until I decide to combine them again. So, but I don't need that module open any longer. So technically speaking, I can do that with all, as you can see. So any combination I prefer. You don't necessarily have to do this. This is just a good idea for visual representation for some customers, because if we can make the interface as easy or as simplistic as possible, we don't get callbacks as integrators, as designers. 3 out of 4 room. Okay, no problem. I can do that. So if I can, here's 3 out of 4 rooms. So it's not limited. So it's only limited to, I mean, technically speaking, now all rooms are linked, even though this button hasn't been pressed. But here's 3 rooms, and we can do that in any configuration. So these 3, these 3 over here. So it's really dependent on how you want to set it up. Again, doing the diagonal approach, nobody ever does that, so I never really mention that. But to make it simple, you can add a combine all or uncombine all button instead of having the customer, okay, let me just press all buttons. Even though, like I said, you don't necessarily need to press the last button, it's good for visual representation. So I'm gonna go ahead, here's my uncombined function and combine all function. So once it's combined all, as you can see, I have complete control of all 4 locations and each room's controls, I should say, will affect all of them until I hit uncombine all, and now they are completely separate yet again. This is extremely handy in conference areas, or not just necessarily conference, but what am I thinking of? Convention halls. Can't tell you how many times we've done conventions where we've been at part of a larger room and they needed to separate us out with the dividing wall. And back then, it was 15, 20 years ago when I was doing that with Loud Technologies. How did they separate the volume? How do they, not the volume, but the audio? I was always curious about that. And now they know this is how they manage it. But back then it wasn't, it may have been DSP control. I don't know. That was NAM, but I don't recall. Okay, so what else? What else can we talk about? That's about the long and short of it. I mean, of course you can transfer. I can go ahead and open up. Let's see. Let's open up. Yeah, like I said, I can't physically show you our ARCs, but this is the programming I've done. So with the ARC K1Es and the EX4s, the encoders are, each microphone has its own volume, where you can go back between the two of them with the encoder button itself, and then the radio buttons on the each EX4 control the BMG source. In this case, there were 4 sources, even though I had the 8 buttons, but you know, that was my fault. So each room has their own individual control. And as I said, even though, as you can see, they all have their own separate controller numbers, as soon as that module is, you link those controls within that module, they will be controlled completely identically, even though their controller numbers are different. And then the third, the SW4, is for combining purposes. These are the buttons themselves. So you have a master control for combining rooms and uncombining. All right. Well, that was a short one. Are there any questions? Any more questions? I know I had a couple of them. So do we have any more questions? How are you controlling volume for BGM on ARC? I will show you. So on the ARC, as you can see, let's just take room 1, which is address 1. So we have encoder A and encoder B. Encoder A will be the microphones. Remember, they were mixed by their own separate slave gate and gain sharing auto mixer. And then encoder B, or the B side of the encoder, will be the volume for the BGM. And I'll show you right here. So there we go. I went ahead and made the controller numbers visible. So that's how I'm controlling them on the K1E. And then you can see here the controller number for the source, and then our controller numbers over here, as well as the presets that I've assigned for those combine all and uncombined functions. Okay, any other questions? Anything? Okay, well, if not, I'm gonna go ahead and let's see here. I'm gonna say goodbye, and thanks everyone for coming in and watching. And if you need any more information, as we say, go ahead and visit our website at www.symetrix.co, or give tech support a call at 425-778-7728, extension 5. And again, my name is Stu Paterson. Thank you all very, very much, and have a great weekend, and happy Halloween.